Hello everyone, this is Aaron from MTGChallengers, and today I'll be going over my Azorius control build for Ixalan Standard. I'm really not much of a control player, to be honest. I've played it online via Cockatrice a few times and enjoyed it, but rarely will I build a control deck for my own use at my local meta or anything like that. Still, with this rotation, I do think blue-white, or Azorius, is looking really good, and I definitely like this build more than most of the control decks I've put together for this channel. So for those of you new to the game, control is a playstyle that focuses on a lot of removal, counterspells, and basically outlasting your opponent until you can use your card advantage to clear their board and drop your main win condition. We do have some creatures in the deck, so we'll start with those. 4 Champion of Wits is really essential for this build. It's a body to block with in the early game, but much more importantly, it lets us draw some cards and get some creatures in the graveyard, and you'll see why that's relevant shortly. And also, when it dies, or if you discard another one to your graveyard, you can eternalize it to get a pretty formidable creature out of it, and get to draw and discard again. Next, I have a playset of Angel of Invention. Phenomenal card, one of the 2 main win conditions of the deck. Ideally, you want to wrath their board, and then the next turn drop this, and then you just have an instant presence on the field. It gives you the option of having a 4/3 flyer, or a 2/1 with some 2/2s on the ground, in case you need blockers or something, and it will let you gain back a decent bit of life, which can be important versus aggro. And I have a single copy of Cataclysmic Gearhulk to conclude the creatures in the deck. Just another way to basically board wipe them. They lose everything but 1 creature, and then you have a 4/5 that can bash in and block just about anything they have. And now we move on to the bulk of a control deck, the spells. Starting things off, we have a new card, Slash of Talons, as a 2/of. Nice removal, really the ideal spell to have against aggressive decks like Red Deck Wins, to take out their little haste guys. 2 damage will kill pretty much everything they have. We can also use it offensively if we need to. We can attack into their big guy with a servo token or a Champion of Wits or something, and then we can use Slash of Talons to finish it off. That would be a 2-for-1 in their favor, of course, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Now we get into the counter magic of the deck, starting with Censor. Great spell, again, particularly against aggro, but it can be useful against just about any deck, especially in the early to mid game when they probably will be tapping out most turns. A full playset because it's useful at all times. Either you counter their stuff, or just cycle it for really cheap to draw another card. Then I have 2 Essence Scatter. Obviously good against any deck with a significant amount of creatures. You can't cycle it, but it counters absolutely. They can't pay any amount of mana to get out of it. And then I have a single copy of Negate to round things out. Like the Essence Scatter, it's just nice to counter stuff and them not really be able to do much about it. I designed the counter magic in this deck pretty similar to most control decks. You want to have a well-rounded selection game 1, and then be able to fine-tune it via sideboarding for games 2 and 3. Other spells I have are Strategic Planning as a 4/of. More card advantage, gets us a card in our hand and lets us get irrelevant cards or creatures into the graveyard for use later. We have some more removal in the form of 3 Cast Out. Awesome card. Exiles pretty much anything they have, creatures, planeswalkers, artifacts, other enchantments. It's basically Oblivion Ring for 1 more mana, but at instant speed, which can make a big difference in some games. And if we don't need the removal, it's another cantrip. Next, I have 2 copies of Refurbish. Pretty self-explanatory. We loot and mill ourselves a lot in this deck, so being able to essentially reanimate our main win condition and some stuff in the side as well is definitely worth a couple slots in the main deck. Pretty much any control deck needs a board wipe effect, and we have a fine one in Fumigate. 4 copies, of course. It's 5 mana instead of 4, which can be a bit slow, but it's great because it lets us gain back some life to get us back in the race, particularly against aggro. Not much else to say, it's a board wipe. You play it to destroy all their creatures, and to otherwise disrupt whatever it is they're trying to do. And now we have the final spell in the deck, as well as its main win condition, God-Pharaoh's Gift, a playset here. Basically, the goal of all those looting and milling effects we run is to fill our grave up with creatures so that we can reanimate them into 4/4 haste zombies. It's a really effective win con, especially since the artifact is not legendary, so you can play multiple ones and get multiple triggers every combat. And once you've outlasted them enough to play this, there's very little they can really do. You're so far ahead in terms of card advantage, and there's going to be at least 1 4/4 coming in and attacking them every single turn. And that's all we have for the spells. Let's take a look at the mana base. I have a playset of Ipnu Rivulet to be able to mill some more creatures into our graveyard. Then I have 8 dual lands, 4 irrigated farmland, and 4 glacial fortress. Great for fixing, obviously, and the basic land types on the farmland allow the fortresses to enter untapped, which is really nice. They also can be cycled for some more card draw. They do enter the battlefield tapped, but a few tap lands are fine for a control deck like this. And then for basics, I have 8 plains and 5 islands, giving us a total of 25 lands, which is a really good number. For control, you want a little bit more to always be able to hit your land drops, always have enough mana to counter their stuff, respond to whatever they're doing, and the curve does go up to 7 for the gift, so it's important to have plenty of lands. And that is it for the main deck. Let's move over to the sideboard. I have 2 creatures in the side, a Walking Ballista and another Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Both will usually come in against the same matches against creature decks, the Gearhulk to have some more board wiping, and the Ballista to be able to deal them direct damage to close the game out if they have a lot of chump blockers. Then I have another Slash of Talons to bring in against the aggro decks to be able to have some more early game removal. 2 Ceremonious Rejection is great to side in against any deck with a lot of artifacts in it, especially in the mirror match to be able to counter their gifts. Also against control, I have a single copy of Spell Pierce. Can also be used against their gifts or against any of the variety of non-creature spells that they're going to have in their deck. I also have Authority of the Consuls in the side as a 3-of. Really great tech against really any aggressive deck, particularly red deck wins. All their haste guys will enter tapped, it slows their tempo down quite a bit, and I'll gain life for every creature they play. If you drop this turn 1, it's just really hard for aggro to win. Against any kind of graveyard shenanigans, I have 2 Crook of Condemnation in the side. Pretty self-explanatory. I bring it in and can exile either individual cards, or I can blow it up and exile everything if I have an Angel of Invention or something else where I don't need to rely on the grave to be able to win. Then I have 2 more counterspells, another Essence Scatter and another Negate. Nice to have in the side, like I said before, to bring in and fine-tune our counter magic package to maximize its relevance against what our opponent is playing. Finally, we have 2 copies of Perilous Voyage. It can bounce pretty much anything they control to slow them down, and if they run a lot of low-cost stuff, we can get some advantage off of it as well. And that's it for this deck tech. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more, check out my deck tech playlist and subscribe to our Tapped Out page. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content.